Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of LGOtv Big Talk. And why Big Talk? Because I hate small talk. One of the great things about being a speaker is that you get to meet the most amazing people who are on the stage with you. In the green room, in the book line, and just like going to and from the airport, all of these things. And today's guest, I didn't actually meet in any of those areas because, as we discussed, we were like ships in the night. We sort of saw each other in passing and gave kind of a wave. And I have wanted to get to know her since a year ago when we shared the stage together. So I am so thrilled that when I reached out and I was like, hey, I'm doing this crazy thing and I have no idea where it's going, but I would love to have you as a guest. Samra Zafar said, absolutely, immediately. I was literally in my backseat and I swooned. So why Samra Zafar? Samra is an award-winning, internationally renowned speaker. She's a best-selling author. She advocates for equity, for mental health, for human rights, for women and girls and men and boys victims of abuse around the world. She's been recognized as one of the top 100 powerful women in Canada. And her book, A Good Wife, Escaping the Life I Never Chose, is a national bestseller and was named among Washington Post's top 10 books and CBC's best books of 2019. It's currently being adapted to a premium TV series, and her work has been extensively featured in global media, on TV, in radio, in print. She's got 3 TED Talks under her belt, and she works with many leading nonprofits, corporations, and universities around the world. She is a personal hero of mine, and I am delighted, Samra, that you have joined us today. Thank you for being here.
Oh, thank you, Laura. This is a mutual admiration society here. Like I've been so excited to get to know you, and since I heard you on stage last year, and I was like just so thrilled. I've been following you on social media, and as soon as you announced this is what you're doing, I'm like, oh my God, like this is my chance to get to know her. So I'm so thrilled to be here.
I know you wrote back and you were like,
It's
I'm
like
so
a total fan club.
yes. I was like, ah. So, your story is an incredible story. You born in Pakistan, raised in Abu Dhabi. Your parents walk into your room one day when you're 16 years old, and they're like, "Hey, guess what you're doing? Here's your
Yeah, getting
husband."
married.
And so, I want to spend a lot of time sort of talking about that and what that was like. But I want to actually jump ahead a little bit in the story because I know that that part of the story is going to come out as we talk about the rest. And I want to talk specifically about the day that you decided enough is enough. The day that you decided
Yeah.
to leave. There are so many, we know, 1 in 3 women, and the numbers are less for men, but it still exists for men that live with this experience of abuse. And then living with the experience of abuse with honor laid on top of it is something else. And so talk to me a little bit about how you come to a decision that this is the day that life changes.
You know what? It's not a day. It's a process. It's leaving abuse is a process that takes years, months, decades. It took me 11 years in total. And you don't really decide that this is the day. What happens is you stay until leaving is scarier than staying, until you're like, I don't know what's out there for me. I don't know if I'm going to succeed. I don't know if I'm going to make it. I don't know how I'm going to do anything in life. I won't have friends. I won't find people who support me because it's very scary. It's very like it's unknown, right? You and especially like for me because I was so young, I never really lived an independent life. I was 16 when I was pushed into this marriage, so I never really knew how to even live on my own. I went from my dad's house to my husband's house, completely dependent, and it was very scary. What's gonna happen out there? It's a big bad world, and that's what abusers do. They convince you it's a big bad world. So you stay until leaving is scarier, and then you leave until staying becomes when staying becomes scarier than leaving. And it all happens at different times for different people. For me, it happened after 10 years of marriage when the violence had escalated to a point where he was about to kill me. And also because I had gained enough knowledge through going to university and getting an education that maybe leaving is not as scary. Maybe there are options out there. There are good people out there.
So I've listened to when you speak, I've heard you tell the story about how you were in an economics class at university, that it had always been your dream growing up. You wanted to go to university. You were like started women, the girls cricket team. You like wanted to go to Stanford, Harvard. You had big dreams. You had like you were so sideswiped by the idea of being married off because you had all these big hopes and
Yeah.
dreams, and you managed to get yourself through sort of distance learning. You managed to get yourself educated and then get yourself to University of Toronto. And you tell a story about how you scored the top of your class in your economics test, and the whole class turned to you and looked at you.
Yeah, it was so scary. In fact, I remember like I was as my prof announced my name, and then everybody is like, "Who's this girl, Samra?" And I just wanted to like shrivel and disappear. I didn't want to be noticed because I was given strict instructions by my husband at the time that don't make friends in class, don't talk to anyone, don't get noticed, because that's what abusers do. They want to isolate you. So I was given very strict instructions. So I didn't want to be noticed. And then suddenly, like my prof decides to announce my name in class, and I was just like, oh God, I should have made at least one mistake or something on the test. Like, why did I score 100? I actually wished I'd made a mistake. But it was actually magical because when people looked at me and I slowly stood up and I soaked in the admiration and the respect and the championship that people gave me, and then eventually like students coming up and saying, "Hey, do you want to join our study group? Do you want to hang out with us? It's half price chicken wings at the student pub tomorrow. Do you want to go get them? Or let's go to Starbucks." And it was the very first time that I was being appreciated and respected for my dreams and goals and my ambition and my intelligence, because those were the very things I was always ridiculed for all my life. As a child, growing up, being told that, oh, dream, but don't dream too big. Don't forget you're a girl. And certainly in my marriage, when I was told that having those dreams and goals was selfish because now my job was to be a good wife. This it was a life-changing experience, like starting university. And I was a mature student. I was 26 when I started. I had two kids already. I was 10 years older than everybody else in my first year class, but it just absolutely changed my life, for so many reasons.
So did you go to Starbucks and go get the
Yes,
chicken
I
wings? Or
did. I did. I totally did. I actually started making friends, and I started learning that yes, I'm worthy of connection and I'm worthy of being respected, and I'm worthy of being talked to. And the world is not that crazy out there, because my ex-husband and his family had completely convinced me that you're never going to survive on your own. So if you leave this marriage, you're going to crash and burn. You're going to be destroyed. The world is really big and it's really bad, and this is what happens to women who leave. So I had this idea of like completely, this kind of like the if I leave, it's going to be all doomsday. But when people treated me with kindness, when I went out and grabbed those chicken wings and Starbucks and all those things, and I made friends, I was like, yeah, you know what? There are good people. These are kind people who are treating me with respect. So maybe it's not going to be all bad.
it must have been a really sort of strange thing. Like on the one hand, you've never had your own bank account, right? You've never
Yeah.
you didn't do all the things that 16-year-olds do as they grow to become young adults
Yeah.
and become independent. And on the other hand, so you're sort of hyper immature in that way. And on the other hand, you're hyper mature in that you've been in this abusive marriage for, almost a decade. You are, you sort of fought and you struggled and you have two children, and you're going out with these university students who probably, I mean, they must have seemed like aliens to you.
Yeah.
They're the things that they worried about must have been like such small potatoes, but also they had, this idealism and these dreams and this optimism that had been literally beaten out of you for so long. It must have been communicating with somebody in a different language. How did you bridge that divide?
It was, I always dreamed of doing that because as I was a girl growing up, I wanted to go to school. I wanted to go to concerts. I was very, very outspoken, and like I started the girls' cricket team in my school because I wasn't allowed to go out and play with the boys anymore. And started a school newspaper to share all my radical ideas of gender equality and whatnot. So it was almost like reliving my childhood and adolescence that was snatched away from me. And I grew up with these people, even though they were 10 years younger. But I could, when I was at school, I could almost forget that I was a wife and a mother. And I was just Samra. I was back to that 16, 17-year-old whose life was cut short and she was pushed into this marriage. So I just forgot all my supposed responsibilities and gender roles that I was supposed to fit into. And at school, I was just one of them. And I related to them and we studied, we talked, we went out, we, grabbed those chicken wings, we went and, did things around campus. And it just felt so liberating. And I loved doing that. I loved being able to talk about just mundane stuff. I loved being able to talk about like our tests and assignments and projects rather than always talking about at home, uh, baby's diapers or the fact that I didn't cook food well enough or didn't wash the clothes properly and then being reprimanded and assaulted for it. So it was very refreshing. It was just it was as if I was living in two different worlds for a while. Like I would dread going home because I just was so alive on campus and felt so much like I was part of a community of people who were like me, even though they had very different journeys, but we connected over shared goals and shared passions and shared interests. And that's where I really found a community for the first time, a community that was all mine. It wasn't thrust upon me by birth or by gender or by marriage. It was just people that I connected with, who I shared values with, and who I shared goals and dreams with. And we could talk about so many things, and it just felt it. I felt free. It it was quite something.
Yeah, so rather than feeling like a stranger in a strange land, they reawakened who you were
Oh,
before it was
totally.
all snatched away. So how did you get away with going out? I mean, if the husband didn't want you, I mean, I'm sure he was not so thrilled that you were even at school, right? But if he didn't
Yeah,
want you doing that, how did you lie, or did he just have to, was it sort of bit by bit that you kind of
it was
eroded
bit by
the
bit.
going out?
It was actually because when I got married, I hadn't even finished high school. I was in grade 11
Right.
when I was pushed into that marriage. So when I arrived in Canada as a child bride at the age of 17, I became a mom at the age of 18, and then I wasn't allowed to go to school. But I completed my education through distance learning. That took 5 years and started a babysitting service at home. And all my money would be taken away from me, but I saved just secretly on the side every month, like 100, $200 every month. And until I had this $3,000 for my first year tuition fee as a part-time student. And this whole process took like 10 years. But by then I had gained a little bit of leverage and I kind of learned how to manipulate the situation to my advantage. So because I was making money at home, because I was running this daycare and they were used to the additional income coming in. So it wasn't just my husband, it was also his parents. We were all living in the same house. So they were used to this additional income coming in. I used that as leverage. And I said, if you don't let me go to school, then I'm going to fold the daycare. And
Oh,
and they didn't obviously want that. So they were like, we're going to lose out on thousands of dollars a month. So I said, well, I'll just take one course and I will do the daycare during the day. I'll take one evening course, but I will go. And I just knew at that time, it's just, I have to start. Even if it's just one course, I've got to start. And I started with Economics 100. I was, my kids were 7 and 2 at the time, and I just wanted to get started on it, and I did, and then after that, once I started, then it was like little by little, I was like, okay, take one more course now and take one daytime course now. And I would pay my mother-in-law to watch the children while I was away for that 1 hour class once a week during the day. So I just found different ways and I learned how to manipulate the situation to my advantage too, because I kind of picked up on how to play their game. So for example, my mother-in-law was the queen bee of the home. So I would, when I wanted to get my driver's license, I said to her, how about we learn driving together and I'll pay for your driving lessons as well, and as well as mine. So she said, okay, great. And, I kind of, got her into that. And we took the driving lessons, and I got my driver's license and she didn't. And then I stopped paying for her lessons. So that's why I got my driver's license. And then similarly, that's how I started the daycare, because I kind of got her into it, that she could make some money as well. And eventually got my cell phone the same way, that, when all the parents of all the daycare kids, they call, it ties up the phone line. So it would be great if I have my own cell phone, and then you can talk to your friends all day. So she agreed, and then everybody else agreed. And then that's how I got my cell phone. And similarly, that's how I got my car. So I just learned how to manipulate the situation, because by then I'd kind of learned that, okay, this is the way I'm going to get things done. So it was just small steps, very minuscule, kind of like, okay, now this win, now this win, now this win. And overall, I think eventually I got to that point where I was able to put my foot down and say, I'm going to university.
And did you understand during all this time that this was abnormal, that this was abuse?
No,
or was
not at all.
This was just the way people
It was just the way
mother everyone else lived?
Yeah, because I grew up in a family and in a society that was so patriarchal and so misogynistic. I grew up watching my dad abuse my mom. I thought it was all normal. I grew up a lot of men who were very patriarchal, very much abusers around me, and then I was thrust into this marriage. And during the marriage, there were so many times when I was assaulted, humiliated, abused, and I didn't even know what to call it. I thought this was normal because I was told by my mother-in-law, for example, that it's perfectly permissible in Islam for a man to hit his wife, so your husband is doing nothing wrong. I was told by my own mom that a woman's job is to stay quiet, just find out what makes him angry and avoid doing that. And I would say, but I don't understand what I do wrong, because the same thing one week is going to please him, and the same thing the next week is just going to piss him off, and he's going to assault me. So I don't understand. And then everybody would tell me, oh, come on, just count your blessings. You have it pretty good. At least he's not breaking your bones. It's just a little slap and a little shove. He's not cheating on you. You should be grateful for the good things. He treats you well overall. So it was just so normalized that I thought I was the abnormal one, that I had a problem with it. Everybody told me that I was the problem because I had a problem with it, because this is what happens to every woman. And so many women have it far, far worse. So what is wrong with me? And I was told that. My ex-husband used to say to me all the time that, why can't you just be a normal woman? My mother-in-law would say, you just haven't had the proper upbringing. You haven't been trained properly as a girl. Your parents didn't do a good job because you don't know how to be a good wife. I was given examples of women in the family who were abused all their lives and they stayed quiet. That, look at that woman, like, she's such a great woman. She was noble. She stayed quiet because of the sake of the family and the honor. Those were the people who were put on pedestals in front of me. So I had no idea that what's happening to me is wrong. And the first time I even got that idea was when I started university. And when I started university, I told you about this change that happened. I was being treated with kindness and respect for the very first time. And I was like, what's going on? Like, am I this rock star that everyone at school seems to think I am? Or am I this scum stuck at the bottom of someone's shoe? Because that's how I'm being treated at home. And one day, as I was walking on campus, I came across a sign that had a bunch of questions on it. Do you feel intimidated? Do you feel like you've lost your voice? You can't go on. You're living in fear. And it was as if that sign was calling to me. And I went in and I made an appointment with the counselor, because it was the health and counseling center. And they had this sign outside, kind of just, I really feel it was like a sign from the universe. And I went and made an appointment, and then a few days later, I had my first counseling session, and the floodgates opened, and I started saying things like, can you just please tell me what's wrong with me? What is that secret to being a good wife that I just can't seem to get? Maybe if I wash better clothes, or keep the baby quiet at night, or not talk too much, or not have opinions, or what do I need to do? And if this is normal, then why doesn't it feel normal? Why is there a stupid voice in my head that keeps saying, this is not okay? There's something better out there. And that's the first time anyone ever said to me, Samra, it's not your fault. You are being abused, and this isn't okay. And sadly, you're not the only one this happens to. it's the first time I heard the word abuse. And she started to then show me um, the cycle of abuse and the diagrams and charts and pointing me towards resources and articles and books. And as I educated myself on what was happening to me, that is what externalized everything that I had internalized for years, that this is my fault, there's something wrong with me, etc., etc. Now suddenly it was like, oh my God, there's actually a name for it. This has been studied. This is my life depicted in a diagram. When I looked at the diagram of the power wheel, and I'll say for people who are watching, like that's the thing that changed my life, because when I saw that, if you just Google power wheel, you'll find it. It was like, oh my God, this is my life. And so it can't be me.
So when you're sitting with this counselor, and is it a she? That's a
Yeah,
woman?
she,
Okay, and
yeah.
she is telling you this isn't normal. This is abuse, and you're not the only one. Are you feeling relief because you're not a terrible person? Are you feeling anger because how could all these people knowingly let you be in this situation for so long? Are you feeling, I mean, like, what is,
All of
I,
those.
I would feel angry. I'm angry listening to the story. I'm pissed off about this.
Yes.
And yet, I don't know if you even had the personal power and the agency at this time in your life to feel anger because you've been told for so long that you're worthy of nothing.
I felt all of those things. I think most of all, I felt like a huge weight was lifted off, that
Mm.
this is not about me. It was almost liberation, that there's nothing I can do to fix this. And then there was this anger towards him, towards my parents for putting me into this situation. Then there was hope that maybe if my husband actually educates himself too, he'll change if he realizes what he's doing is wrong and it's abuse. So I actually, like, one time printed off a diagram of the power wheel, and I went and showed it to him, that this is what's happening, it's wrong. And I wanted to almost educate him. And he
And
then
do you
got
look back
so
now and
mad.
think like,
I
right,
know,
you look
I
back and
like
you're like, "Oh,
laughing.
naive
And
little
I'm like,
Samra, what was
see,
I
this is,
thinking?"
yeah. And I'm like, see, if only you understand how wrong this is, you'll stop doing it. And he got so mad, and he thought that, why are you getting counseling from these people who are so different than us? And then the abuse escalated because he felt he was losing control. Ultimately, abuse is about power and control. And when the abuser feels he's losing power, he exerts more control. So he just that's when the violence started to escalate so much, that's when I decided to leave, because there were a few things that were the tipping point. First of all, then gaining awareness through going to regular counseling about my rights in Canada. Him and his family had told me for years that if I left him, I would be deported and sent back to Pakistan, and I would lose my children because he sponsored me and my kids are born Canadians. I learned that there is something called child support, there is something called spousal support, there are pathways to education, there is hope. So it's not going to be all bad. There are good people out there, and I had made some friends at university as well. Then I think the biggest factor for me was learning about how the cycle of abuse perpetuates from generation to generation. And because I had grown, I could see how, because I had grown up seeing my father being an abuser and my mom taking it and accepting it and living with it. My ex-husband was very similar. My marriage had a similar pattern, and my husband and his family were already talking about getting my daughters married off when they were 16 or 17. And I was like, I have to break this cycle, I have to break it for my kids. So I was in my second year of undergrad. I was 28 years old, and my daughters at the time were 10 and 5 when I just picked them up and I left and I moved to campus housing. I was living on campus. I was working 5 jobs, minimum wage, part-time jobs. Like, I was a TA, I was tutoring kids, I was doing some research. I was working at the night shifts at the student center, selling bus tickets and movie tickets to students. I was working at the office of the dean, and I was also making home cooked food and selling to students on campus because everybody was, always starving for home cooked food, and campus food sucks. So I found ways of making some money, and going to school full time and raising my kids. The and eventually graduated as the top student at University of Toronto, and won a lot of awards and scholarships that started me on this journey of advocacy. But it was really about uh, it wasn't like it was all smooth, because there were so many days when I was like, maybe everyone's right. I'm just crazy. Like, I was sleep deprived. Sometimes I didn't know when my next week's groceries are going to come from, or my next month's rent is going to come from. But there was still always like one more step, one more day, just keep going, just keep going, just keep going. And the worst thing, though, the most crippling thing was for me, the backlash that I faced from my family and my community and culture. Like, I didn't realize how bad it would be. And that was the shame that was inflicted upon me, as if I've done something so sinful by leaving my marriage and by saying no to abuse. And that's something I still continue to face, although now I've grown a very thick skin and I kind of deal with it with humor. But that was quite something. And I think that's the most difficult thing that it took me a while to get over. But here we are.
So this, I mean, this is such a fascinating thing, and in one of your TED Talks, you actually say this line where you talk about honor, and you talk about how a woman's expected to hold
Mm,
everyone's honor in her hands, yet she has none herself. And you
yeah,
talk about how the women in these marriages get praised. You're staying quiet for the sake of your children. You're such a
yeah,
good wife. You're staying quiet and you're honoring your family. You're such a good wife. And you're withstanding all of this, standing there with honor. You are such a good wife. And when they don't, it becomes deadly, right? These so-called honor killings.
yeah,
How that is, living in a world where, I was, born in New York City, raised in Miami, I live in Boston. I'm like as progressive, liberal, bubble
mhm,
kind of, American as they get. And, in this space, we celebrate the women who stand up and walk away, right? We celebrate women like
yeah,
you. And we do it, I think really naively, because we think, oh, whatever, she just got proud and had honor for herself and walked away. And you talking about how it took you 10 years to save up $3,000, right? To
yeah,
be able to do this. And I think it all starts with, you have to get the ID. So you have to get the driver's license. And when you get that, then you could open a bank account and all the things that you have to do. But it's like these steps one by one over the course of 10 years, all the same time as you're getting the tsunami of brainwashing propaganda, right? It's
yeah.
honorable to be quiet. It's honorable to do this. This is your destiny. This is your family heritage. This is this. So when you get the backlash, do you have to make a decision? Like, you look at your children and you have to make that decision. I'm going to leave for my daughters, because, and that means I may leave everybody and anyone who has been in my life up until this point.
Yeah. It's you described it so well. It is a tsunami of messages that are just coming at you from everywhere, that this is what you're supposed to do. And it almost feels like you're fighting a battle with everybody. Like, you're alone on one side of the battlefield, and then everyone you know, including your family, your community, your culture, and people that you call friends, people that you've, you know, counted on for support, everyone just abandons you. You're on your own, completely on your own. And
And you must be
that's what,
getting gaslit like crazy. Like, "Oh,
oh,
come
big
on, it's not
time.
really that bad. Oh,
And not
come
just
on,
that,
just be a little,"
not just that, oh, he loved you so much. He was so wonderful to you. And the thing is that abusers, they put up a really great front in front of people.
Mm.
There's actually a heartbreaking scene in my book where this is about 9 years into my marriage, or 10 years, like the year before I left. So the violence had escalated a lot by then. And we were in Karachi in Pakistan for my sister's wedding. And my husband had gotten pissed off about the clothes that I was wearing or something, that he actually beckoned me to go up to the bedroom while there was a dinner party going on. So there was a huge dinner party going on with all family members, extended family, everybody was there. And I thought he wanted to talk about something. So I went up to the bedroom, and he slapped me around, pushed me to the ground, kicked me in my stomach. Like, it was just terrible. And I was in so much pain, but I couldn't say that to anyone because I knew no one would believe me, because he was the perfect son-in-law in front of everybody. He was putting on a great show. I didn't want to create a scene at my sister's wedding and steal her thunder, so to speak. So I just went and pretended and laughed like nothing happened. I just, covered my bruises with some makeup, and there I was. And the next day, my uncle said it at one of our family events that Samra is the luckiest girl in the family because she has such a loving husband. So it's all such an illusion. So when I left and I said I'm leaving because I was being abused, no one believed me. Everybody thought I was making it up because I was crazy. Everybody told me that he was so wonderful to me and he was so wonderful to my family. How could I do this? I was the bad girl. No woman from in my entire family for generations had ever gotten divorced. Divorce is a bad word. Single motherhood is a bad word. And on top of all that, I was now suddenly in Canada. So I mean, I got divorced and separated in Canada. So this is, I'm talking about here, that this was happening. This is like North America, progressive society, right? Like people, a lot of people who are here from that culture still carry those values. And the backlash that I got, like, I mean, for sure, I was given tons of support at university. Like that's what saved me, because on one hand, I was getting all this negative talk and backlash, but on the other hand, I was getting a lot of support to lift me up. Because if that community, the university, hadn't been there, I would have definitely either gone back or I would have just drowned in that, because it was so strong. And not just that shame that was inflicted, but suddenly I was fair game to be sexually harassed by men who were like married or much older, because they thought I was fair game. I was damaged goods. I was suddenly like, I had this label of I'm available because I'm a single mom and I'm living on my own. So that was the worst thing for me, I think. Although the practical stuff was hard, getting my financial independence and getting back on my own 2 feet, or for the first time on my own 2 feet, getting my kids in order and getting my education and my job and all those things were challenging enough. But it was that emotional assault that society inflicted upon me, or a segment of society inflicted upon me. And that's why I feel like I was just so lucky to be in this country and in this continent, because if I wasn't here, I'm sure I would have gone back. And that's why so many women find it so hard to leave, because we are social creatures. We want to be loved and we want to belong and we want to be part of our families. And if the entire family and everybody abandons you, and you feel like, if I leave this man, I lose everything, I lose everyone, that's a very strong force. And I can't tell you how many hundreds of women have written to me over the years, thousands probably, telling me that, and these are educated, empowered, financially independent women, like doctors, engineers, lawyers, who are writing to me all the time and saying, I can't leave because my family would never talk to me again. I can't leave because I lose everybody. I will be ashamed to my family and my culture and my community and my society. So it's a very, very strong force, this honor. And when we talk about honor, and we think of like honor killings, that is just the tip of the iceberg. That's the stuff you hear in the news, because like, oh, this woman was murdered in the name of honor. Like that's just literally like a minuscule portion, because honor is not just about honor killings. Honor is this whole system of deep misogyny, patriarchy, of putting this idea of honor on a woman's clothing, her marital status, her ability to bear children, her age, her even just the way she carries herself. Like everybody's honor is attached to the woman, but the woman herself is never honored for who she is. And it's a system. So you never hear about those women who are just short of being killed, right? Because they haven't been murdered yet. It's not going to make the news. You're never going to hear about the women who are living their entire lives in this system and never ever been able to achieve their dreams and goals. If I hadn't fought so hard to go to university, I would still be there. So you never hear about those. So there are millions and millions of invisible victims of honor who never come to light because they're not killed, so they don't make the news. So honor killing is just that extreme. That's just like domestic violence. Like if you if you count domestic violence by the number of homicides that women are killed in the, by their intimate partners, that's just the men that have taken that last extreme step and gone, gone that far. But it's 1 in 3 women. In fact, the number is rising during the COVID pandemic because the isolation is an abuser's best friend, and right now isolation is being handed to them on a silver platter. So, like in Canada, I can tell you, and even in North America, some shelters are experiencing 4,000% increase in the amount of calls that they're getting.
Wow.
So it's really it's so much, it's all around us. I'm absolutely certain that there are, like, whoever's watching, and even you, Laura, like, there are women in your circle, in your community, in your workplace, your neighborhood, your school, your wherever you go, who are affected by violence of some sort. You may not know yet, but I bet you they are there. And until we start bringing these conversations out from under the rug and talking about these things and removing the shame and stigma for speaking up, they're going to remain invisible.
So I wanted to, that's the perfect segue to the next thing I want to talk about, which is that you actually published an article about your situation on the day that you graduated from university. And
Yeah.
like there's one level of bravery where you decide to start becoming independent. There's another level of bravery where you decide to leave. And then there is this whole other like stratospheric level of bravery where you decide to go public about the whole thing. Why did you decide to do that?
Because I knew it wasn't just my story. I was, when I graduated, when I left my marriage and when I was going to school and working those 5 jobs and raising my kids and all of that, I just was like, I just want to graduate, get a decent job, put food on the table for my children, and live a life of, relative respect. That's all I really hoped for. But then I graduated with these top honors, winning these dozens of awards and scholarships, and more success than I ever could have imagined. And I just knew that there was a purpose behind it. I just felt this deep, I can't even describe it in words. It was this anger, hunger, passion, this deep desire, this deep calling, that there is a purpose. Like, how do I get from where I started from as a child bride and abused and sexually assaulted and all those things to becoming the top student and winning these awards and scholarships? I just felt like I had a responsibility to do something with my voice. I had a platform. Suddenly, like, people wanted to hear from me because I'd won this huge award at University of Toronto. That goes to only one person from all 3 campuses, and I was the first mature student ever to win it. And people wanted to hear from me, and I was like, initially I would just like, yeah, I have these big dreams. I'm going to do my PhD, and I'm going to do this, and I'm going to do that. And I just felt like I was being a hypocrite almost. I just felt like there was more I needed to do, and I knew that my story isn't just my story. This is the story of millions and millions of women and girls around the world who continue to suffer in silence because no one wants to talk about it, especially from cultures that are honor-based, especially from cultures where it's so, where women are oppressed on a day-to-day basis. Like, I read about statistics of like 12 million girls every single year are pushed into child marriages. There are 700 million women alive today who were child brides. I'm one of them. There are, like we just discussed, 1 in 3 women in North America, and much higher in other parts of the world, who are affected by intimate partner violence. 1 in 2 of us are affected by sexual or physical harassment of some sort in our lifetime. This is the world we live in. And this could be my daughters, this could be, our friends, this could be us. And I just wanted to do something, and I didn't know what to do. I didn't know how to go about it, but I knew that the first step would at least be going public with my story. Maybe it might help some people. So I did share my story, and that blog got published, went live on my convocation day in 2013. So here I am. I go in the morning, get my degree, very emotional day for me. I come home, and I log into my social media, and oh my God, it was flooded with thousands of messages from women all over the world, thanking me, congratulating me for breaking the silence, for telling me how they could resonate with my story. I started meeting some of the women who reached out to me locally. I started meeting them and mentoring them, and I saw how just that human connection and having somebody to talk to made a difference in lifting up their courage. And it just started me on this journey, and I started like sharing my story in like little small community events. Sometimes I would actually go to organizers of an event and say, can you please give me the mic for 5 minutes, because I have something, maybe there's one woman in the audience who needs to hear what I have to say. And I did it on my own cost, on my own time, for years. Never got paid a dime. I was always like, just, I had my banking job, and then I was kind of doing this on weekends and evenings, and just putting out articles, videos, being part of different interviews. And then 4 years later, so in 2017, I was approached by a major magazine in Toronto, and they wanted to publish my story. That went viral and became one of the top articles of the year. And then after that, that's how I got my book deal. And now the book is being turned into a film. But it all comes from the very same, whether I did that small community event and that small blog, or whatever I'm doing today, it comes from that same place, that maybe there's one more woman I can inspire, I can touch, one more life I can help change, and one more little girl who I can probably maybe save from this honor-based path. And I've received so many wonderful messages. Every day I wake up to them, and that's what keeps me going. I call it my soul food. My very favorite one was a man from Karachi, Pakistan, the city where I was born. He wrote to me and said, I've decided to cancel my teenage daughter's wedding and send her to school after I read your story. And just 3 months ago, three young girls, they're like 12 and 13-year-old girls in a small village in India. They read my book in their tiny school library, and then they wrote me a handwritten letter, and the teacher at the school scanned that letter and emailed it to me, and then we exchanged videos. And some of the things that they said were like, after reading your story, I know I'm on the right path, and I'm never going to give up on it, and I'm never going to give up on myself. So um, it's just so rewarding and fulfilling. And I hope one day we can see a day where this work will not be needed. But right now, it sure as hell is needed. And I think the more we collectively support each other and raise our voices and break the silence, it's so important, because there are millions of silences that are still waiting to be broken.
I'm so thrilled that you are out there doing this work for so many women who have experienced any type of abuse, physical, emotional, sexual. I think it is, I think it is so very important. My next book that I'm gonna write is gonna be called Wonderhell, and I want to take 60 seconds and explain this moment of Wonderhell to you, because
Yeah.
I want to ask you a specific question about it.
Yes.
When I was flying back from that event, the last event of the Art of, where you and I were on the same
Hmm.
stage, I was on a red eye, and they had switched planes at the last minute, so I was no longer in the fancy, first class lie flat that the event had organized for me to fly from Vancouver back to Boston. And they had a mechanical issue, so they switched the
Yeah.
plane, and I am there in the center seat, coach, and I can't fall asleep, and it's 4 in the morning, and finally I just give up, and I type out this blog, which is like, it's 4:28 a.m., or maybe it's 1:28 a.m., or maybe it's 7:28 a.m. I have no idea, but I'm 1,500 miles from where I was and 700 miles from where I'm going, and somewhere between the blur that was yesterday and the blur that is tomorrow is the space I'm in right now, and the space I'm in right now is Wonderhell. It is so amazing and incredible and wonderful that anybody wants to spend even 5 minutes talking about this thing that I wrote, this idea that I have. And I've also never been so tired in my entire life. It's
Yeah.
hell. It's wonder hell. And I
Wow.
think that people like you, who have suddenly hit upon a message that is so necessary, that goes viral, that is needed by so many people, find themselves in this place where they are humbled by how wonderful and incredible it is, and also it is heavy and it is exhausting, and it is hell. And I think Wonder Hell is the space where your burden of potential comes and unpacks itself in your psyche and is like, hey Samra, what are you going to do with this platform, with this stage, with this
Yeah.
leverage that now you have? So I would imagine that for you, there is this moment where you're like, I'm getting thousands of messages. This is incredible. And most people would say, yeah, but I bet you're getting a lot of hate mail, and that's probably pretty scary. I would guess that the messages of support and thank you and you helped me are probably, while they're your soul food, they're probably equally as scary, because you have all these people now who rely on you, who need you,
Yeah.
and you have to keep going. How do you thrive in this space of Wonderhell where what you are doing is so necessary, but it also means that you have to be the one who continues to bring the energy, to put yourself out there, to put yourself in harm's way, to be public in a world where you are a target? How do you, how are you finding yourself in this
I
space of,
love the concept of Wonderhell. I'm totally going to, I can't wait for you to bring that book out. I'm so excited to read it. But absolutely, it is Wonderhell because you're doing work that is so necessary, that is so needed. It's definitely soul food, but it's also soul draining sometimes.
yes,
And sometimes you want to just kind of, you know, take that hat off and just like be a nobody, you know. Sometimes you just want to like it's very it's a lot of responsibility. And as the work has grown, you know, I can't do as much. For example, when when I started out, it was um maybe dozens of women who were writing to me every week. Now it's thousands, and I can't possibly reply to them all. Like, there are sometimes excruciating emails that I receive from women who are talking to me or writing to me from different parts of the world with their stories, and they need help, but I just can't reply to all of them. I can't talk to all of them. I do what I can with putting up videos and inspirational quotes and messages and things on social media, and I'm hoping that, you know, my book will help some of them. And I send away like free copies of my books to people every month, and as a way to kind of just give them that hope and inspiration. But it's difficult, and it's also emotional labor, because there's obviously, I want to share my story and I wanted to help people, but at the same time sharing it over and over again, it, sometimes it just kind of is, it's re-triggering and almost oh, there we are. I don't know what happened. So it you know, it can be re-triggering, it can be re-traumatizing for a bit. And I'll share one quick incident. Like, when when my book was coming out, it was back-to-back media interviews, speaking. I was like, literally, I was living on planes. I was just flying all over the country. I was doing so much of speaking and media interviews and things like that, and and answering a lot of audience questions all the time. And, you know, some people will ask some very powerful and but also very um, triggering questions, you know. And it just sort of doing it week after week after week. One day I just crashed on stage, and
mm,
it was, somebody asked me about how it's impacted my children. And my older daughter, because she grew up watching a lot of this violence at home, it really traumatized her. And she, in her mid-teens, went through a lot of mental health challenges because of it. She was diagnosed with complex post-traumatic stress disorder, and she was in a lot of distress. She's doing really well now, but we went through a really, really rough journey as a family to heal through that. And my entire focus for a year was just to be able to keep her alive. And It was the worst thing I've ever been through. And as a mother, I'm sure like everybody can understand that. But it was really, really hard. And so someone, when asked me that question, I just started crying on stage,
it's like a
and I
knife
couldn't
to your
help
heart.
I couldn't help it. And there was also another time when I was cleaning up my closet, and I came across my passport. It was a Pakistani passport from when I had, it was my very first passport after I got married. So I opened it, and it was my name, and then it was my married name, and then my age was 17. My marital status was married. My occupation was housewife at the age of 17. And there was a picture of me in it, which was taken. The picture was taken when I was 16, and I looked like a kid. I could see my girls in it. My daughters are now my daughters are now almost 20 and 15. So it was close to my younger daughter, her age, and I just looking at that picture did something to me. We just, even though I've been sharing my story for years, but just looking at this child version of me, and then the sense of loss and sorrow that I felt for this young girl who never will experience what it's like to be a child, to go to concerts with friends, to have the biggest worry of her life being the next exam or test, to choose when to have children, if to have children, to choose who to marry, to fall in love, and all of those things. Like that's all gone. My 20 years of my life, through 10 years of marriage, and then 10 years of like digging myself out of that hole. um, and even as I grew up, it was just like looking at that picture just did something, and I couldn't stop sobbing for like 3 years. I mean, 3 hours. So yes, it was definitely a lot of hell at that time. So as much as it is wonderful the work that I do, it does take a toll. And what I've learned through doing this for years is to take breaks and take time to myself. Like right now, I'm spending time with a friend in Ottawa, and we're going hiking, and we're doing a spa day tomorrow, and that's wonderful. And I now take those moments to really take care of myself, to unplug, and know that if I'm not okay, then I'm not going to be able to help other people. So it's okay to draw boundaries. It's okay to take care of yourself. It's okay to say no, and it's okay, and you can say no without feeling guilty about it. And it's
Oh,
okay to be put yourself first, because you absolutely have to. Even as a mother, we feel mom guilt a lot, and I certainly feel that a lot because I'm traveling or I'm doing all this work. But it's important that I lead by example, and I want my girls to know that it's okay for them to put themselves first. It's okay for them to take care of themselves, and they have to love themselves and take care of themselves first before doing that for other people. So if I'm not doing it, then they're not going to model that behavior. And it's just, you have to be deliberate about it, though, because on one hand, you're so passionate about what you do. So you're so passionate about helping people and adding value to their lives, and changing the world and all of that. And I love what I do. I will, like, even if I win the lotto tomorrow and I never have to work a day in my life, I would still continue to do what I do because I absolutely love it. It's my soul food. I thrive off of it. I live off of it. There's nothing that gives me more joy. At the same time, it is emotionally draining, and sometimes you do have those moments of hell, but you just have to, like, at that those are the times when you have to recognize that, okay, I need to, like, take care of myself right now, and I'm going to make that a priority, and then go back into it.
yeah. I mean, I think especially for women, we get hit with this like, "Oh, you're so ambitious. You shouldn't be ambitious," right? It's like, God forbid women are ambitious. There's this whole issue
Oh my
around that.
God.
But I mean, I think mom guilt is like just another plank of the patriarchy, right? It's like nobody ever
Yeah.
talks about dad guilt. Moms are supposed
No.
to feel
In
guilty. Like
fact,
if you
dads are like, oh, what a wonderful dad. He's actually taking care of the kids today. He's babysitting kids. And no, he's not babysitting. They're not like kids that you're being paid to babysit. Like, they're your children. But yeah, there's no
exactly.
such thing as dad guilt. Dads never feel guilty about pursuing their goals and ambitions, but moms do.
Yeah, moms do, and we're made to feel that way, and so here's the thing about Wonderhell. I think your personal Wonderhell is actually as big as your ego. Like, your burden, you feel the burden of your potential as big as your ego is. So when I was feeling that feeling, I was like, "Well, everybody says if you name it, you can tame it." And I'm like, "Screw that. If you name it, you can claim it." Like, I wanna be
Yeah.
on national TV. I wanna be under the oak tree with Oprah. She gotta talk to someone, right? Why not
Yeah.
me, right? You're making this book, this life into a movie. The way that will impact so many more people, that
Yeah.
will bring this message of hope and of possibility and of options to so many individuals that I think, it is incredibly strong, but it also takes ego, right? It also takes
Mhm.
you saying, actually, I'm worthy of this, and I should be doing this, and it's okay that I am asking for this. So,
Absolutely.
how do you, like, as a woman, I know that that's really hard, but how do you, as a woman who has had, I mean, you had decades and decades of training. Like, where does the strength, the internal strength come from to say, actually, they were wrong and I'm worthy of it? Because there has to be a little voice in your head that still is like,
Oh, that voice,
talking.
there has always been a little voice in my head that has told me that I deserve better. I can do, like, so I'll tell you something. When even the first few years of my marriage, which were the absolute worst, the first 5 years were absolute the worst in terms of the control, the emotional abuse. And by then I hadn't even learned how to manipulate and get my own way in the house. So I was just, I thought, this is it, that my life is over. This is going to be my life forever. There were moments when I didn't even want to go on living. And even during those days, and there was no hope of ever being able to go to school, ever being able to get out of this marriage, I would still stand in front of a mirror with a piece of paper rolled up in my hand like a fake degree, and I would practice my graduation speech. And I would envision myself giving that speech as the top student. And that happened 10 years later, or like probably no, 12 years later. It
So
happened.
where did that come from?
So
Where did that strength?
it it was, I don't know, I think it was just, even as I was little, I was always dreaming of going to Harvard, changing the world, like, doing something magnificent with my life. It was that ingrained ambition, this fire that was like, I'm meant to do great things.
Right, but you're
Life
growing
is
up in a
everybody.
house. So you're growing up in a house where you're watching your mom be abused.
Yeah.
You've been hearing talk about marriage. I'm fascinated for, like, did you see something on TV? Did you read something in a book? Like, can you
I
pinpoint?
think it was just, I was very passionate about education, and I think
Mm,
there were a lot of teachers who were very instrumental in my life. My English teacher, she always told me that I was always, I loved writing, and she loved my writing, and she always told me that, you're going to change some lives with your writing one day. Or my economics teacher, or other teachers, I was always the top student in my class, and in my school I was. So they always like said, you're meant to do great things. Like, so I heard that
mm.
from people, even though on one hand I was hearing from people I shouldn't achieve a dream of doing great things because I'm a girl, but on the other hand I did hear this from people, that you're meant to do great things. And to an extent, my dad also, like, even though he never followed through and he never had a plan of how to help me get there, and he pushed me into this marriage, but certainly as I was growing up, he would say things like, one day my daughter's going to be a top student at a top university. So
Oh,
I think just that stayed with me, and because that spoke to what the voice inside my head. And throughout that marriage as well, I always just believed somehow that I'll get there, like, even though I can't really I couldn't understand it then. Hindsight's 2020, so now when I look back, I know that that was always there. But it just was, I was always like, no, there's something better, so I could never shut that voice off. And I'm so glad that I wasn't able to shut that voice off. And so today, when I now I'm more deliberate about it. Now I actually, like, listen to that voice. I calm myself down whenever I'm making any decision, and I'm like, okay, what is my intuition saying? What is the universe telling me? And I'm going to listen to it, and I'm going to act from that place, and I'm going to deliberately, consciously make that decision, instead of kind of unconsciously doing all the things that I did before. So it's a very I feel like all of us have it in us. I think we just don't listen to it as much as we should. I certainly, sometimes did, sometimes didn't. But I think once we realize that we have that internal compass, that guide in us, and we can choose to act from that place, it becomes our superpower. And we are all here in this world for a purpose. We are here in this world to do great things. And great things doesn't mean you have to be on a stage and publish a book and make a movie about it. Great things means that you touch lives, you leave a legacy, you live from a place of purpose, you live from a place of heart, and you live your truth, and you follow your truth, and you are you're the best version, the most authentic version of you. And that is always what I dreamed of, and I'm just following I'm not even learning new things. I'm just unlearning all of the things that held my true self back and letting it come to the fore and
Mm.
letting it come to the surface and then living from that place. So it's not that you have to like find it. It's already in you. You just have to uncover it. You just have to use it. You just have to like reclaim it, because layers and layers of societal conditioning and upbringing and all of that kind of bury all that down, and your purpose and your and then you feel like this is the way you should be instead of who you actually are. So when we find that place, when we realize who we really are and we start living from it, you become unstoppable and you can really achieve everything. And because there's no one else out there like you, like you're unique. And and that's what appeals to people, because we are all on that journey of uncovering ourselves and living from that place and living our truth. Um so why not you? Why not me? Right? Who else would do this? And if anyone else does it, great, let's join forces and do it together. Because even though you might be saying the same thing and I might be saying the same thing, but my perspective and your perspective will be different, and together we can add more value. Together we can create more change. So we're all in this together. We're all part of an ecosystem of purpose, and we all come from these different places, but we are joined. So even though we're whole on our own, but we're also part of a bigger whole together.
I think that is so absolutely beautiful, and it is a great note to finish on. I love the image of you as a young girl standing in front of a mirror with your rolled up piece of paper, like telling yourself that you can do it and that you're worthy and that life is going to be, the world's going to be your oyster and that you're
I
going to do
still
great
do that.
things. I love
Not with the
that. Do you
I
really?
still do that. I still do. I not with a piece of paper, but I still stand in front of a mirror and give myself pep talks and like, you're awesome. You can do this. Like you are worthy of this. And I still have these big dreams of like, one day my film is gonna come out and impact millions of lives around the world. And I'll be up on a stage talking about that and telling women to believe in themselves. Like I still practice those speeches, and I know one day it will happen. I know
It
it will
will
happen.
absolutely,
Uh,
absolutely
and
happen, and the
once
world will
you
be
know that
better
and you
for
believe
it.
in that, it will happen. The universe conspires to make it happen.
Absolutely, absolutely. I was like, "You know what? This is it. I'm embracing Wonderhell. I'm living fully into it. I'm not gonna
Absolutely.
apologize for my ego. I'm not gonna apologize for
Never.
what I wanna do because the impact that we can make, especially as women, is so huge." So,
It's
how
phenomenal.
where do the people find you?
Oh, people can find me, my website, www.samrazafar.com, Instagram at I am Samra Zafar, and Twitter, like I'm very, very findable. I just invented a word. And in the end, I just want to say, Laura, like you are personifying what we're talking about, right? That I love the concept of Wonderhell. I love what you're doing, and I'm just such a big fan. And thank you for including me in your little world and your community. It's we're all, like I said, we're all in this together. So we're all part of that bigger purpose, right? So we all have our individual purpose and the way we're advancing this, but really it's about empowering people to really embrace who they are and just champion themselves and own their potential and own their life and say, you know what, I'm meant to do great things, and we can do great things if we all we got to do all the only person we need permission from is us.
Yeah, absolutely. I posted just the other day that I was sitting around. I was trying to figure out how to do more media, and I was like sitting around waiting for someone to give me permission. And then one day I looked in the mirror and I was like, "Hey, dummy! Like the person you've been waiting
Yeah,
for is you. Just
is you.
do it." So
Let's
that's
do
why
it.
I started this. So
Absolutely.
that'll be it for us today. You and me and the chorus of other badass men and women who are making change in the world. Thank you, Samra, for being here.
Thank you so much for having me. Take care.